Welcome to another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. It is Week 10 in the CFL, and we are back to get you all ready for it. Ian Cameron and Will Arndt back once again this week to talk CFL Week 10. We got to give Will Arndt a pat on the back for his best bet with Ottawa, the Red Blacks, never in doubt, as they crushed the Calgary Stampeders last week to get a much-needed win and snap their losing streak. So well done, Will, on that. How are things in the life of Will Arndt? Things good?
Yep. Yeah, we were just talking off camera about where's Will. I'll be doing a little bit of traveling this week, some fun stuff in the football and entertainment industry, and then heading back home for the old birthday next week. So be doing a little bit of traveling, but all is well. And happy to get back here. And a combo so nice that we did it twice. So let's get to football.
Yeah, no doubt. By the way, take the under my age when it comes to Will's birthday coming up. That's all I'll say about that. Take the under. Bet the under when it comes to that. Fun week in the CFL last week. No question about that. As always, we will begin by talking about the team on the bye week this week. And I don't think it's possible for this team to go into their bye week on a higher note or playing any better than they did last week. And I'm talking about the Saskatchewan Roughriders and our little pal, friend of the show, of course, Trevor Harris, and his Saskatchewan Roughriders, who just laid a number on the Montreal Alouettes last week. And certainly, if you watched the show last week, I mentioned I liked Saskatchewan in that game. Wasn't my best bet of the week, but I did like them at -3 or better. It turned out that it didn't matter what fucking number you laid with Saskatchewan. It was just a convincing, dominant victory for the Riders, 34-6 last week in that game. And Montreal lost just more than just a football game last week. They lost a slew of key players, both sides of the football, to injury in that game as well, and leaving their status up in the air for this week as they host the Edmonton Elks, looking to bounce back. So it was a double whammy for the Alouettes, but 34-6 Saskatchewan. It was a real gamut of problems. First of all, Marc-Antoine Dequoy got injured early in that game last week, and he was ruled out right away, didn't return. And right from that moment, you got players shuffling around in the secondary and players in different spots, and communication kind of suffers, cohesion kind of suffers. And when that happens and you're playing against a guy like Trevor Harris, who's maybe playing some of the best football personally I've seen him play. It's like he's playing like a fine wine right now, getting better with age. But, you're going up against a guy who's very accurate. And if you're not going to get a pass rush either, and to be honest, that was a disappointing part of what the Alouettes defense did last week, because they really didn't ruffle the feathers and get a pressure on Harris to the amount that they need to. Like, I know him well, and speak to him a decent amount. And I can tell you right now that when Trevor struggles, it's because you get him off the spot, you get pressure, and you affect his ability on those timing throws. He's a very timing quarterback. If he has the time to make those throws for the routes to develop down the field, he's going to be accurate. He's about as accurate as it can be when he can set his feet, the route develops, the timing is there, and he's not going to miss very often. And the problem with Montreal is twofold last week. There was no pass rush from the front of the defensive line. And second thing that was a problem was the secondary. They lost Dequoy. Sutton got banged up and left the game. Kabion Ento is another guy that had an injury, and they were just ravaged in the secondary. And a guy like Trevor Harris, when you're not getting a pass rush on him, is going to eat that up and devour that every single time. And he was able to do that last week for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And then on the flip side, McLeod Bethel-Thompson, this is what you get with him. He had a good game finally against Calgary, leading them to victory on the road against the Stamps the week before. I thought it was probably his best game since he's been a starting quarterback here for the Alouettes. He made key plays. He limited turnovers. He limited mistakes. He got the ball out quickly. And that's like he went back to the same old shit that wasn't working last week against Saskatchewan. He's hanging on to the ball too much. He's taking too many hits. He's indecisive, bad decisions, bad throws. And it was the whole, array of problems all over again for McLeod Bethel-Thompson last week for Montreal against a very good Saskatchewan defense that's good against the run, and their secondary has ball hawks led by Roland Milligan and company. So, like I said, it was just a complete and utter horrific game, both sides of the ball. There was nothing really you could be happy about other than maybe the kicker, the fresh maker, as I call him, Jose Maltos, who continues to drill the huge kicks. Yeah, I call him the fresh maker because Mentos, the old candy, that was the old motto. And that's what I call Maltos. And he was, again, with a couple of long kicks last week. That's about the only good thing you could say about that game for Montreal. But for Saskatchewan, because that's who we're talking about here, 7-1 atop the West Division, playing absolutely outstanding football. Why not them to win the West? Why not them to win the Grey Cup? If Trevor's going to play at this level, that's the funny thing is Emelis didn't play last week, their best receiver. He was out. They just got him back. Then he's out again. Sean Bain's trying to get himself, reestablished. There's still a couple other receivers that have been out, and the offensive line has also had, a couple of injuries the last few weeks, but they're getting healthier. So, you think of all this going on and they're still 7-1. I mean, you really get excited if you're a Rider fan and you're a watermelon head, about what's to come here for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. The one thing that's concerning, I guess, and, Trevor kind of said it in his post-game interview after the win, was it's kind of shitty time to have the bye week just because, we're playing so well and we're 7-1. We just want to keep rolling and keep this good feeling and rhythm going. But not much to say in a bad negative light right now, Will, with this Saskatchewan team. First place in the West and 7-1 heading into their bye week.
Yeah, and I think they're really built to have legs once the colder weather eventually comes and playoff football becomes more of a thing. You got a quarterback that has seen the cycle of the CFL season. He's seen every defense. He's been in every experience. Whether or not he's got it done, he does have the time and the inclination to what that is. And then you got a running back that is downhill, can really hammer it home in those really cold, inevitable, frigid Saskatoon evenings. You got a defense that is just really a solid unit, takes the ball away, gets after the quarterback, has a lot of negative plays. I think one of the top, defenses in the CFL in that regard in terms of negative plays, and TFL is not so much sacks, but I think they're really set up to last. And, while it's, you're hot, you want to keep going, it's never the wrong thing to get some rest and go into the bye week, not frustrated. And hopefully they can, take this time to reload and keep it going.
No doubt. And that's going to be the only thing is, can they just pick up where they left off when they hit the field and play once again in a couple of weeks? All right, let's get to week 10, and we will begin with a game where I will be in attendance at Hamilton Stadium, home of the Ticats, as I am for every Ticat home game, taking on the BC Lions Thursday night, and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander Day in Hamilton tomorrow as the hometown hero. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, SGA, will get his due, if you will get his day of glory to bask in the accolade, the adulation, and the enthusiasm from his hometown faithful. They're doing this big rally and ceremony for him before the game. SGA will be back in the city. They're giving him the key to the city, and he's going to be in attendance at the Ticat game tomorrow night. And it's something that they've called Shea Day here in Hamilton, and he's deserving every bit of it. This is the best NBA basketball player on the planet right now in the world, based on him winning the NBA MVP this year, NBA champion, scoring leader, you name it. He accomplished it this year in basketball. And Shea Gilgeous-Alexander deserves every bit of what he's going to receive in his Shea Gilgeous-Alexander celebration day that will take place surrounding this Thursday night CFL matchup between the Lions and Ticats. Hamilton, 3-point home favorites, 55 and a half the total here in this game. So very high total. Of course, it went over the total when these teams played not too long ago. 2 weeks ago, in fact, it was Hamilton in BC, a game where it looked like Hamilton was in a decent amount of trouble, down 33-23 with about 5 minutes left. But as you know, a CFL game is not over until there's no time left on the clock. And the Hamilton Ticats quickly marched down the field when they were down by 10. They got it to within 3. They left enough time on the clock to get the 2 and out that they needed. They got it. and they got the ball back. And again, down the field they went. I thought BC was nowhere near aggressive enough on defense on that last drive. Bo Levi Mitchell, I remember it. He was picking them apart with the underneath stuff, no pass rush, just trying to play soft zone coverage. And there's Bo Levi Mitchell just, taking what the defense gave him and picking it apart. And the thing is, too, there was still so much time left on the clock that, they didn't need those big 40, 50-yard chunk plays. They could go, take what the defense gave them and still have plenty of time to get the ball in the end zone. And that's exactly what happened with the game-winning touchdown. Bo Levi Mitchell to Keandre Smith, who has suddenly displaced Kenny Lawler the last 2 weeks as the dominant receiver for the Ticats. And it's because, look, the teams are going overboard to shut down Kenny Lawler on a weekly basis. That's why. But a big comeback win there for Hamilton, 37-33. BC is off a bye week. They have not played since that just brutal loss to Hamilton where they had the 10-point lead and coughed it up. So this is a circled spot for a rested BC Lions team, but a BC team that's had all kinds of issues defensively, and they're going to have to fix that here going into this game on Thursday. I will say this from a Ticat standpoint, this kind of feels a little bit like what Calgary had to deal with last week. This is a really, really tough spot for the Ticats. Someone that obviously always wants them to do well. I'll be the first to admit this is a very troubling spot for the Hamilton Ticats, solely and strictly from a scheduling standpoint. You've been on the road for 3 straight weeks in Ottawa, win, BC, comeback win when it looked like you were left for dead, and then a back-and-forth affair last week in Edmonton, Saturday afternoon, where, it was a close game throughout. Hamilton gets the game-winning touchdown from Mitchell with about, a minute and change left. And then Edmonton's going down the field, and let's be honest, if not for a Keon Julian Grant drop in the end zone, and he has to have that. If you watch that late drive that Cody Fajardo and the Elks had down 28-24, for those that had the over, it cost us, unfortunately, that bet. But Keon Julian Grant, it's right in his hands. Corner of the end zone there, and just a clear drop. He's got to have it. If not for that, maybe Edmonton wins that game and Hamilton doesn't, but at the end of the day, he dropped that pass. Hamilton got the stop they needed, and Ticats get the 28-24 win. But nevertheless, that's another grueling game. There was a lightning delay for about an hour and a half last week in that game against the Edmonton Elks. So, the game ended later. It pushed their flight back to Hamilton a little bit. Saturday night flight now, maybe instead of a late Saturday afternoon flight. And now you got to turn around after 3 straight road games. And keep in mind, they won all 3. So I worry about a little complacency setting in. I worry about, we're reading our press clippings setting in a little bit. I'm going to ask Will about that. If that dynamic and just the mental, you're piling up wins, you get a little satisfied and your chest is puffed up a little bit. And maybe if a spot like this, where maybe knocks you back down here if you don't play well, that's concerning. And again, Saturday to Thursday in a short week in this league is difficult. It's difficult in the NFL. It's difficult in any football league when you're going to turn around, play on the road on a Saturday, and then play on a Thursday night in your very next game. So I think it's a troubling spot, in my opinion. Certainly when it was open, when this line opened, with Hamilton 4.5-point home favorites, I grabbed BC right away. There were a bunch of bets that I knew I was going to move right away because I figured the lines were going to move in my direction. So I had to get on them early. And one of them was BC at plus 4.5. I said, this is just too tough a spot. And I think Hamilton's still the better team. And certainly they're playing well. You're stepping in front of a team that's won 6 in a row after 0-2. They're now 6-2. But this situational spot and scheduling situation, Will, you can't dismiss it. This is 3 straight on the road. And now a Saturday to Thursday turnaround for the Ticats after that 3rd consecutive roadie. And on the other side, you got this BC team licking their chops. This is the Hamilton team that went in there and stole the game from them. And they haven't played since then, the Lions. They're desperate. They've been stewing on this for 2 weeks. They've got the bye week, the extra time to prepare. I mean, it's set up nicely here for BC. But can you trust the coaching staff? I got Lions fans that hate their coaching staff. They think Buck Pierce has been totally underwhelming, has not been the kind of quality head coach they expected, considering all the great years he was the OC at Winnipeg, did a great job there running that offense. people aren't happy with Mike Benavidez because of the play of this defense, which is getting worse, not better by the week. There's a lot of people not happy with the coaching staff right now that the BC Lions have going, and questions being thrown toward them, whether they're a competent enough staff to get this ship turned around, in the right direction for the BC Lions. But you can't deny from a pure spot standpoint, it clearly is an advantage for the Lions. The question is, are they good enough to take advantage of it? And are they good enough to take advantage of it in spite of, in my opinion, maybe not being the better of these two teams at the end of the day? So the situation dictated, especially with where the number was initially at 4.5. I had to take BC at that number. I could only look over, but I also have that weird feeling here, and the total is 55.5. It's a little bit higher than it was in the first meeting, slightly higher. And when that game explodes for 70 points 2 weeks ago in BC, 37-33 Hamilton, there's always that little semblance when you're playing, two teams are playing each other again in such a short period of time. Sometimes it goes the other way with the points. If it was 37-33 2 weeks ago and the same two teams play each other a couple weeks later, sometimes you get 24-21 or 21-17, in that rematch. And the defenses go out of their way to make the adjustment and corrections following a game like that. So that's why I'm kind of pumping the brakes on the total here as far as the over is concerned. But at 4.5, I'm on BC. I'm going to think about what to do if this falls further. Like if Hamilton gets to the point where they're -1 or -2, I'll probably buy a little Hamilton and look for a middle. But I think it's an advantage for BC, Will. It's just, are they good enough to take advantage of it here in this spot? What do you think? Lions, Ticats.
Yeah, you very eloquently laid out the whole macro of it all in terms of, the timeline and the obstacles for Hamilton. And it's absolutely a real thing. It's one of those things, you would never admit it. And I remember this from my time in the locker room. Like, you would never admit that, like, we've been rolling, we can afford to lose one. But
but it's in there, right? It's in. You won't say it, but it's in
room.
there, right? It's in that mind.
The second you walk back in the locker room, you lose that game. You're like, hey man, short week. The coach is gonna bring you guys up. He's gonna say, hey, short week, tough turnaround. We're banged up. Let's get back to the drawing board. We've been on the road the last. So it's there, whether it's acknowledged or not going into a game, sure. And it's absolutely a real obstacle, especially 3 in a row on the road, which you mentioned the dynamic out west in last week's episode. Like that's a real obstacle to overcome. The energy is going to be great on SGA day, but right off the bat, this is my favorite game of the week. I really like the Lions here. I think they're in a spot you mentioned with their coaching staff and their season where, they have some things to prove. They have some things to button up. They have the bye week to do that. I was just looking at the injury report. They're not banged up. This is the roster they want to go to war with. I think Nathan Rourke's been playing really well. Last couple of weeks, he's gotten things rolling. I think him and Buck Pierce spending more time together is going to bode well for them. And so I really like them in this spot here to cover and if not just outright beat these guys up pretty good. But that said, obviously got to respect the fact that Hamilton's ripped off 6 in a row, but I just think it's time in a good spot, just like some of the matchups we laid out last week where, this is just too much to bite off for Hamilton.
And it's been a road warrior series history. Hamilton's won 3 in a row, believe it or not, in BC. But BC's won 2 in a row here in Hamilton. So the road team is actually dominant. And I remember last year, 44-28 it was for BC. Now, Hamilton was much worse then at that time of last year than they are obviously now. They're playing much better. They're a better team. But this spot is just a difficult one, in my opinion, for the Ticats. And again, Nathan Rourke, too. I mean, I don't put the blame on him. He played great in BC against Hamilton 2 weeks ago. The blame's on the defense. Defense has to close that out, Will. You're up 33-23 with 5 fucking minutes to go. You got to bring it home. And they weren't able to do it.
Yep. And I think they've been sitting on that for the last, 10 days, 2 weeks. So I think you'll see them come out and, put it on them. And I expect it to be competitive, but I expect BC to win here. It's my favorite bet of the week.
There you go. BC outright, says Will Arndt here in this one. And I want to point out something, too, about this from a point spread standpoint. Hamilton's only been laying points at home once this year, and that was against Ottawa. They were laying 5.5 in that game. They only won by 3. So, again, that's why at 4.5, I really like BC at that number. 3 now, it's
Yeah.
it's definitely lost some value, but I still think they're very capable of. Honestly, I'm with you. I actually think they're probably going to win this game outright. I hate to say that. I'm a Ticat fan. I hope I'm wrong, but
Yeah, just covering a little bit for your fandom. It's all good.
I know. I got to admit, like I always say, I'll
Yeah.
give you an unbiased opinion on this team every time. Just like last week, I gave you an unbiased, correct opinion, by the way, on them last week, saying don't lay the 4.5 with Hamilton. Take Edmonton plus 4.5, and Edmonton lost by 4. They won by the hook from a point spread standpoint. So
You win either way.
that's right. That's the perfect type of game right there. Will make a little money with Edmonton plus the points, and they still win the game straight up. Hamilton. That's the beauty. You can't ask for better than that from a fan. There's no doubt there. All right, next up we've got. By the way, there's a couple things I want to point out. BC defense has had issues, but their offense is fine. The receiving core, I think, is finally healthy. Hatcher and McGinnis, and everyone's healthy there. Hamilton, by the way, Ternowski's out, but ready to make his Ticat debut, and I've been waiting for this for a long time because I was happy when they signed him in the offseason. Drew Wolodarski is finally going to make his Ticat debut at receiver here in this game, so very happy about that. It's been a nice, possession receiver over the years for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and like I said, he'll finally don the black and gold for the first time here on Thursday night, and we'll see how it turns out. All right, Friday night football tonight. Edmonton and Montreal. We've got the Alouettes 3.5-point home favorites, 51 the total in this game. I already was asked this by someone who texted me saying, what am I missing here, Ian? The Montreal Alouettes are a 3.5-point home favorite against the Edmonton Elks, the 1-6 Edmonton Elks. Am I missing something? Yeah, you're missing the fucking injury report, genius. Have you looked at Montreal's injury report entering this game? It's a mash unit. It is a ravaged Alouettes team right now from an injury standpoint. And you certainly can't chalk it all up to the injuries, losing 34-6 at home against Saskatchewan last week. But it didn't help that in the first half, Marc-Antoine Dequoy, one of your best players in the secondary, goes down. Wesley Sutton exits the game. Kabion Ento exits the game. The O-line, too, has a couple concerns entering this game as well for the Alouettes. When you look at Justin Lawrence, and he's not practicing here early in the week, that's something that you have to be concerned about. Receiver positions banged up with, and their kick returner, James Letcher Jr., probably going to be out. Both Austin Mack and Tyson Philpott have not practiced this week. They both missed the game against Saskatchewan, and they're probably going to miss again. And now, I did say coming in earlier in the season and on this show, Will, that the Alouettes had a lot of good receivers, and a lot of depth there. But at some point, the depth does get chipped away when you've got as many missing as they do.
Sure.
It puts more stress on Cole Speaker. It puts more stress on Charleston Rambo. It puts more stress on, they just brought him in from BC, Alexander Hollins. They just signed him from BC, so you're probably going to see a lot more of him now moving forward. But it's just a very, very banged up football team right now. The D-line is, relatively healthy, but at the same point in time, they also haven't been able to get the pass rush here the last couple of games that you need from them. So there's a lot of boatload of issues right now for the Montreal Alouettes. And now they welcome in an Edmonton Elks team that I know they've only got the one win this season, 1-6. But in the 2 games since Mark Killam, the rookie head coach, made the switch at quarterback from Trey Ford to Cody Fajardo, and I'm not saying Trey Ford's the only reason they were bad before. That's not true. The defense was horrible.
Yep.
But Cody coming in, even though they're 0-2 in those 2 games, they've been competitive. They lose by 3 at Saskatchewan, who we mentioned, 7-1. They're playing great. And yet Edmonton, they only lost by 3 in Saskatchewan 2 weeks ago. And then last week against Hamilton, that's a coin flip game. That could have went either way, and they went toe-to-toe with the Ticats last week. And if not for a Keon Julian Grant drop in the end zone for Edmonton, we may be talking about an Elks' second victory of the season in that game. So there has been improvement from the Elks. Their defense has been at least modestly better. I don't want to say they've been a lot better, but they've been modestly better, at least a little bit better. And it's a product, I think, Will, of Cody Fajardo keeping the chains moving maybe a little bit more. You're sustaining drives, and the time of possession has been better for you since Cody's taken over here in these 2 games at quarterback for the Elks. So that has preserved the defense a little bit. They're not as tired. They're not as gassed later in the game because the offense is just not going out 2 and out, 2 and out, all the time like they were before. So there is positives here for Edmonton. It comes down to the ability to close out the game, to get the touchdown when you need, the field goal kick when you need, the big return when you need it, and the defensive stop when you need it, with the game on the line. And that's what Edmonton is still lacking. And that's the only thing they're missing right now. But they've been competitive. And then you factor in the intangible elements of this game. You've got guys playing against their former team on both sides of this quarterback matchup. McLeod Bethel-Thompson, former Edmonton Elk, now with Montreal. And, of course, Davis Alexander is still out. So MBT will start. And MBT was awful. I cannot sugarcoat it last week. He was typical McLeod Bethel-Thompson last week, Will. He's coming off finally a good game. His first win as a starter for the Owls in Calgary 2 weeks ago. I thought he played better. He limited turnovers. He got the ball out quickly. And he made plays when he had to, relied on the defense, ran the football. And then last week, it's back to the same old shit with MBT, unfortunately. Mistakes and hanging onto the ball too long, taking sacks, not reading the defense, bad decision-making. Underthrow, overthrown passes, underthrown pass. It was the whole gamut of issues for McLeod Bethel-Thompson against Saskatchewan last week. Had just a really rough game. And that's what you get, unfortunately. He is up and down like a yo-yo. The consistency has been an issue throughout his career, MBT. So he's going to be looking to bounce back. But if you think he's going to want to beat his old team, that's certainly true. Could you imagine what Cody Fajardo is going to be thinking? Cody Fajardo was traded by this Montreal Alouettes team in the offseason to Edmonton because they wanted to pass him over and anoint Davis Alexander as their new guy. They were all in on Davis Alexander. Said, we're ready. It's the DA era now. It's the Davis Alexander era. We're making the switch. And it was not easy because Cody led them to a Grey Cup 2 years ago in Montreal. And yet Danny Machocha, the GM, says, you know what? We're moving on. We got this young kid.
Last year as well?
Last year, remember, Davis entered the last year when Cody got hurt, and he didn't lose a game.
Yeah.
And I think people saw that at that moment that, holy shit, this kid's really talented.
Yeah.
And and because, again, this dollars and cents thing, they weren't ready to pay, a little bit of an older quarterback the money that they were ready to make Davis the starter. And I think that's the business decision they came to, Montreal, in trade. But that doesn't make Cody Fajardo feel good about it. I'm sure him and I've talked to Davis, of course, in the past. Him and Cody were very close. But at the same point in time, you're competitors. And I know Cody Fajardo's not going to be thrilled with, I won you fucking fuckers a Grey Cup 2 years ago, and now you're just ditching me.
Yep.
All of a sudden here in the offseason. And now he's going to get a chance, remember, Montreal and Edmonton played earlier this year in Edmonton. Cody Fajardo didn't start that game. That was a Trey Ford game earlier this season. Will be his first crack, his first start against Montreal since they, basically threw him aside in favor of Davis Alexander. You don't think he's got this spot circle? You don't think he'll be charged up to go to Montreal to Percival Molson on Friday night and make a statement? If you damn right he will. Now, does that automatically mean Edmonton's going to cover and win? No. But I'll tell you this right now. You combine that intangible element of Cody, I think, wanting to play the game of his life probably, or something along those lines, considering he got dealt by the Alouettes in the offseason, versus a Montreal team that's struggling and injury, beaten up to shit right now with injuries. Montreal, both sides of the football. There's another one where early in the week, Edmonton was out there at +4.5. I took it right away. Edmonton Elks +4.5. 2-0 ATS, by the way. I know they lost both games straight up, Saskatchewan and Hamilton, with Fajardo under center, but they covered the point spread in defeat both times. 3-point loss at Saskatchewan, 4-point home loss against Hamilton, 2-0 against the number in both games. If that happens again here, especially with the number I got, +4.5, we're golden. We're going to cash another ticket here, another 3-4 point loss for Edmonton. I could see it. But I actually think they got the chance to go in there and win. I mean, I still, Give me Cody Fajardo over MBT right now. It's really that simple too. MBT was atrocious last week. You can't stress that enough. It's so disappointing. It's got to be frustrating and disappointing, Will, for Jason Moss, because he just saw this guy take a huge step forward in a positive against Calgary and gave it all back last week against Saskatchewan with just how bad it was for him. So maybe because of the inconsistency, maybe this is a good week for MBT. Who knows? And it is Edmonton's, shaky defense, but I still like the Elks here. And Montreal, just a really banged up football team, hard to lay points with, at least for me. What do you think here, Will? Friday night, Edmonton, Montreal.
Yeah, I love the matchup from just a fandom standpoint with the quarterbacks going back to their respective spots. So I'm with you on that. I'm looking at Cody Fajardo. I mean, honestly, a tip of the cap to Cody. He's been dealt a couple of different times in his career. Abandoned from certain places, if you want to use that word. And I think obviously he's going to be looking forward to this matchup going back into Percival Molson and getting a crack at these guys to kind of just, let them know, what you let go. Because I was saying before I so rudely interrupted you, I'm pretty sure they were the 1 seed last year as well. Right. And, to go from Grey Cup champs, disrupting a dynasty to, getting the 1 seed and, stringing together a couple of good years to be in dealt. I mean, that's tough, but good for him for, going into Edmonton and playing the long game and being prepared. And he's come in and done a really
That's right.
Nice
they
job.
were the 1 seed in the East last year because you're right. Toronto won that East final in Montreal. Right. That's the game Kelly got hurt. Arbuckle came in and they hung on for dear life at the end to win and get to the Grey Cup. Yep. And,
I'm looking here. Cody's got the second lowest interception percentage in the league right now, outside of your guy, Bo Levi. In his starts, he's got 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. He's thrown for 80% completion percentage. So it's been really productive. And Justin Rankin's been a really solid running back. He's running it well. Defense, I think, is improving. We've been very critical of them over the first few weeks of the season. So I really like them. And good on you for, getting the line when it was in a better spot. I think you said it was 4.5 when you got it.
Yep, yeah, early in the week, both BC and Edmonton, and it moved toward BC and Edmonton, both of those. Yep.
Good get. And, I like Edmonton in this spot here for a lot of the reasons you laid out. I'm looking at the depth, or I'm sorry, not the depth chart, but the injury report as well. Edmonton's got, I think, 2 guys on it that are not relevant. And Montreal's got all sorts of issues. So tough spot for them. And you mentioned what'd you call him? The Mint Man, Jose Maltos.
Yeah, fresh maker. The fresh maker. Yeah,
the fresh maker. I saw
Mentos. Remember those old commercials? I'm old enough. Yeah. I'm a 40-year-old man now. The Mentos, the fresh maker.
Yeah. And Jose and I go way back to 2018 was his first year in the CFL, and he was, one of the first guys the CFL brought in with the international player when they instated that. And he spent 2 full years on the practice roster, and we all saw he was pretty solid, and we were always wondering when he was going to get his crack. And he was behind Lewis Ward, and he was in the gym every day, and he would stay after, and he was he's from another country, and he wasn't his language barrier. So I'm really proud of him. Just a little side note, he's done some really awesome stuff, and to hit a franchise record for an iconic franchise for longest field goal is pretty cool. And I just wanted to tip the cap to him for, something maybe the fans weren't privy to, of watching him walk to work and not have the closest friend group because he's an international player, and all the things when that first got instated, guys in the locker room were kind of this international thing, is it a charity case? So I wanted to just give a shout out to him because it's very cool. And he's been a very productive, good player for this team in his last 2 years.
He deserves a shout out because he comes through the international pipeline. CFL does this with Europe and does this with Mexico now, where they get they scout some players looking to come play professional football from international countries. And Mexico is one of the programs they've set up, and that's where Jose Maltos came into the league from, and he has thrived. He has just missed money in the bank with the long distance kicks, and he showed it, all season so far for the Montreal Alouettes. So it's great to see that. And like I said, he was the only good freaking thing about that game last week for Montreal. 6 points, and they all came from his, golden leg, if you will, in that debacle against Saskatchewan. last week. All right, let's continue along here. Next up, we've got the Ottawa Redblacks, the first of 2 games on Saturday. Ottawa Redblacks taking on the Toronto Argonauts. We've got the Argos 3-point home favorites in this game, and the total sitting at, looks like 53 across the board. By the way, with the total in the Montreal game, I lean under, because I've said it before with that Montreal team. With MBT at quarterback, they're an under team. You know, I think that's now 3 straight unders in Montreal games with McLeod Bethel Thompson starting for them. The BC game, the Calgary game, and then last week against Saskatchewan. They were all unders. And again, with McLeod Bethel Thompson at quarterback, you know, not as explosive, not as vertical deep down the field, run the ball more, rely more on the defense. I could only look at a Montreal game, especially at 51, under. The only thing I'm fearful of is I kind of think the opposite of Edmonton, where, 51, I probably could only bet an over with them with their offense and the issue still on defense, but I'd still lean under in that game, thinking that Edmonton's defense at least can keep McLeod Bethel Thompson under wraps. Because I will say this, they faced Trevor Harris, Bo Levi Mitchell. They faced a lot of good offenses and good quarterbacks the last few weeks, Edmonton. This might be a bit of a step down for their defense here to maybe have a better showing. We'll see. All right, Toronto 3-point home favorites, 53 the total. Ottawa gets off the schneid, second win of the season. They needed it desperately. I know they feasted on a Calgary team, traveling on a short week, on the road, banged up, no number 1 quarterback, PJ Walker. He struggled, no question. That certainly benefited Ottawa, but they also played a better game, a clean game, less penalties. I thought Drew Brown at quarterback played by far his best game of the season. He looked very confident, composed, made all the throws. I thought he had a very strong game for Ottawa. And now can they carry it over here against a Toronto Argonauts team that beat Winnipeg at home 2 weeks ago, but dropped the rematch to Winnipeg in the Peg last week against the Bombers. We'll see if the Argos can bounce back. So you got Ottawa off a win, Toronto off a loss, and normally when it's comparable teams, I like the team off a loss. But I got to admit, Toronto laying 3, and it was 3.5 at one point as well. Not crazy about that, quite honestly. And the Argo injury report, it's nowhere near as bad as Montreal's, but it's getting there. There's definitely some concerns for Toronto this week coming out of that Winnipeg game. Cleon Lang limited in practice. Sorry, that's Ottawa. Let me go down. There we go. There's Toronto. Tavares Daniels limited. Kevin Mattel, who's shown you something since he's been at receiver. He's limited. Of course, they were without Derek Sluka, who's had a great season, the Ithaca product. Had that amazing game last time they played Ottawa with the defensive touchdown, scoop and score, fumble return touchdown, then the block field goal return touchdown. 200 fucking return yards of touchdown in that game, Sluka. He's probably not going to play here. And the big one again, unfortunately, they just got him back, a couple weeks ago. Wynton McManus, captain of the defense, leader of the defense, he's limited again. And now there's talk that he's the potential he doesn't suit up here Saturday afternoon for the Argos. And he's by far the best player they got on defense. So, that injury report, it is a bit concerning here for the Argos. Going into this one, and you just got to think too for Ottawa. It's been a tumultuous season. They've had struggles at both sides of the football. They were without Drew Brown for a period of time. The O-line was really banged up, and they also had some secondary injuries. Well, the good news is, the secondary is much healthier now, and the offensive line is also finally starting to get healthy. They got Peter Godber, their great center back. Last week. He made a world of difference. Zach Pelahos, they got him back. Then he left the game due to injury last week, but there's a chance he still might be able to play this week for Ottawa. So the O-line is finally getting healthier, and you could see they played a lot better with the better health as well to go with it last week against Calgary. So I actually think Ottawa could use that game as a bit of a springboard, get their confidence back, take the practice field, with a little pep in their step. When you've been losing and losing like they have, and then you finally get that win, maybe you practice harder. The fire in your belly's a little back again, and you not practice harder. Everyone wants to practice hard, but practice with more confidence is what I mean. And I think Ottawa could bring that here. And when you look at Ottawa versus Toronto, as far as series history is concerned, it's always been one where I've been more interested in, not laying points. And if I'm not mistaken, too, I'm just going to go check and make sure. off the top of my head. I know Toronto's had the better of it, 8-2 straight up, but the Ottawa Red Blacks, I think at times in Toronto, have had some success in the past. We'll see if they can do that here. It has been a Toronto lopsided series history, and we know Toronto won in Ottawa late in June 29-16, but really the difference was those two Derek Sluka touchdowns, the defensive score and the special team score. You know, the Arbuckle and the Argo offense wasn't great in that game, and Ottawa's offense with Crum, I remember it was Dustin Crum too. That's another thing. Dustin Crum started that game for Ottawa when Toronto beat him 29-16 in Ottawa earlier. They didn't face Drew Brown. Now they're going to have to face Drew Brown, and there's still some issues at times with that Argos defense as far as up front. You know, and if McManus doesn't go, that hurts. Secondary, I like McFadden, the way he's played, but I think there's some holes in that secondary outside of that for the Argos, that a guy like Drew Brown, who now I believe also has a healthy receiving core, Hardy, Addison, Geno Lewis. I mean, he's got pretty much the majority of his receivers now healthy again as well, Ottawa's, and Drew Brown here for this game. So I like Ottawa, anything at +3 or better here in this game. And I also think this is the first game this week where I really, really do like the over, just because I expect points. I think Arbuckle continues to play well here the last few weeks. I mean, they have scored, this Toronto team, 31 points in the last 2 games versus Winnipeg, 25 plus in 4 straight games entering this one. We know there's definitely dynamic kick returners on both sides as well to make field position better. Now, again, Ottawa's been under the total 3 straight games. Keep that in mind. But Drew Brown was working himself back to health. Calgary had P.J. Walker last week, so that's clearly going to help keep the game under. I think this is a higher scoring game. I think it can go over 53. And I like Ottawa here, +3 or better, to build on the much-needed win they got last week. And you also have to factor in, too, they got the extra day of prep. They played Thursday night last week. Toronto played Friday night against Winnipeg. So, yeah, I'll take the Red Blacks here, +3 in this one. Will, what do you think, Ottawa-Toronto?
For the audience's sake, I hate that we agree so much. It's not on purpose, but I really,
we don't script anything before. We just come on and we record the show.
Yeah, and I really see it the same way that you do. I like Ottawa in this spot. I think they're due to get going. I think Toronto's got some injuries that are of concern, and not for nothing. If you just say it out loud, Chad Kelly aside for a second. Nick Arbuckle or Drew Brown. Honestly, Drew Brown showing that he's finally getting going. I would take him in the matchup with the quarterbacks. The offense has been solid, and that's tip of the cap to Arbuckle and Ryan Dinwiddie for the job he's done coaching. But Nick, for not for nothing, is still leading the league in interceptions with 9. So it's just some stuff that you're going to get.
You got to take the highs and the lows, like a beautiful last week. Big bomb touchdown to DeMonte Coxey, who had a great game. And then right after that, the next time they have the ball, at that time they'd just gotten right back into the game against Winnipeg on the road last week, and he throws just this killer interception right after. And it just sucked all the momentum out of there for the Argos.
Yep. So I like Ottawa in this spot. I think they're going to start to roll and get themselves back in the mix of things. And, for Toronto, while I do think there are elements that they're the better football team, I was trying to do some homework before the show. What is the word with Chad Kelly? Are we week to week? I think we're closer to he's going to get shut down for the season than we are. He's coming back. Like, it's still week to week, but I'm starting to think we're not seeing him this year. Honestly. Yeah. That's too bad for his sake, and it's been a rough 2 years since they signed him to that extension. But just from a football standpoint, I would like that.
I'm wondering if he's even going to be with the Argos or in the CFL next year.
Yeah,
all the setbacks with the injuries, and of course a little bit of the coming off the behind the scenes problems he had, that got him suspended in the first place. You just wonder if this is the end of the road for him in the CFL.
Yep,
it's possible.
Yep, and for me, give me Ottawa +3 or anything, moving in that direction, and give me the under here.
All right, there we go. There's a disagreement.
Yeah,
there you go.
I'm not as bullish on the offenses in this matchup. So, give me the under. That'll be where we disagree.
All right, there we go. First disagreement, always good. Makes the show a little more interesting sometimes, no doubt. All right, the other game Saturday and the last game of Week 10, Winnipeg and Calgary. I can't believe for third time already these teams are playing each other. But here we are again. Calgary 5-point home favorites. The total here 51.5 across the board. Obviously, the biggest question coming into the week is who's going to be at quarterback for these teams. Chris Drevler started last week with Zach Collaros injured. So the question was, would it be Strevler or Collaros this week? It looks like it will be Zach Collaros. He's back at practice this week for Winnipeg, and it looks like he's going to start. And obviously for Calgary, it was P.J. Walker last week, and he struggled mightily, just didn't look ready to start a CFL game in that performance against Ottawa after Vernon Adams got injured the week before. The question would be, is Vernon Adams going to come back, or will it be P.J. Walker for a second straight week for the Stampeders? But Vernon Adams is back at practice as well. So it's looking like we're going to see the two veterans here, Zach Collaros and Vernon Adams, respectively. And now things could change, but at least as of right now, as we're recording this, it's looking like it's going to be Collaros and Vernon Adams, VA, starting for their respective teams. Winnipeg, the defense is still not fixed. I know they won last week against Toronto. They didn't win because of their defense. Well, the defense did get, I'll tell you who did play well on defense last week. And the few big plays he made probably were the difference in the end. Willie Jefferson, his pass rushing numbers were down this year. For some, like he just had not had that big season that we've become accustomed to. And finally last week, the pass rush was there. They harassed Arbuckle. He was getting after him. He was knocking down the ball a bunch of times. He is the master of PBUs, pass breakups, Willie Jefferson. And he had like 5 or 6 of them, it felt like, last week against Nick Arbuckle and the Toronto Argonauts. He was back to the dominant force that Willie Jefferson has been throughout the majority of his CFL career. And I think it's a big reason why Winnipeg was able to survive that game, even though, again, the secondary still had problems. Big plays given up to Arbuckle and Coxie and Brissett and some of those Argos receivers. They got burned deep multiple times. This is just nowhere near the Bomber defense we've seen in the past. You know, they did win, but they still gave up 31 points, you know, in that 40-31 game last week that they snapped the 3-game losing streak. But you go back to the 2 games against Calgary, 37 allowed, 41 allowed, and then 31 allowed in the 2 games against Toronto. So just secondary's the issue, because finally they got a little pass rush. Jefferson at his best game last week. That's another thing to me, Will, that's fucking scary if I'm a Bomber fan. Willie Jefferson was dominant last week. We still gave up 31 points, and he was dominant. You couldn't have gotten a better performance from Willie Jefferson last week, and you still managed to allow 31 points in that game. That's not a good sign, Will. I don't care what who you are. That, to me, is not a good sign for Winnipeg's defense. Secondary's got more holes than Swiss cheese. I mean, they've got to absolutely fix some things here. And now last week they tried shuffling the deck chairs, and there were new faces and new players and new positions in that secondary. Didn't seem to help. You know, they were still giving up all kinds of big plays. And now the VA back under center, you worry about that here for Calgary. Now, the one thing that would concern me for Calgary and might be a benefit for a struggling secondary of Winnipeg, Will, is you need receivers to throw the football to. And Calgary had a lot of banged up receivers last week. The Bagleton, we know, is out for the year. Damian Alford, the great rookie, out. A couple others out. Clark Barnes, who I think is a very underrated receiver on this Calgary team, missed that game last week as well for the Stampeders. The good news, that they do have good news on the Clark Barnes front. It's looking like he's going to play here this week. He's back at practice. So that is definitely some good news here for the Calgary Stampeders, because they did have cluster injuries at receiver last week in that game against Ottawa. So to get Clark Barnes back is big. We'll see if that's the other guy that was injured, Tevin Jones. We'll see if he can play. He's been back at practice as well. Damian Alford still limited, but certainly that was an issue last week. A bit of depletion at receiver, but they will have Vernon Adams, it looks like, back. For Winnipeg, when you look at it, I don't know where they go from here with the pass defense, Will, just because Mike O'Shea's already gone to the well of benching guys. He's already gone to the well of changing up the the starting lineup in the secondary. What else do you do right now? You just got to put the same folks out there, cross your fingers, and hope for better results at this point. It's a tough spot to be in. Meanwhile, on the flip side, it looks like Zach Collaros is going to play. Zach's got to play better. And Mike O'Shea's even getting pressed by the media this week. You're sticking with him, but he's had all these interceptions, and you're just. Someone asked him, you're kind of putting up with. He says, we're not putting up with anything. We've had Zach Collaros since 2019. We've been putting up with a lot of great play from this guy over the years. So he's defending his look. This guy has had a great run in Winnipeg over 6 years. Grey Cup championships, 2 of them. Multiple Grey Cup appearances. They win the West every year, and he's been a big component of that. But you also have to be realistic and talk about the current form, and the current form for Zach is not where it's been in the past. He's making mistakes. He's not reading the coverages as well. He's making bad throws, decisions, and that's not what we have come to expect from a guy like Zach Collaros. But we're seeing it a lot more this year from him under center. Product of that is, look, I think they got to commit more to Oliveira in the run game better. I think the O-line has taken a step back. But I think there's going to be reason for Zach's here in this nonsense too, but everyone questioning him now all of a sudden after all these great years. He's coming off a game, a couple games where he struggled. I think he's going to be a really motivated quarterback here. And he's going to get his left tackle, it looks like, Stanley Bryant, who's been a perennial all-star in this league. Year after year, it looks like Stanley Bryant, who's missed the last few games. You can't express enough how important he is, because without him, that hasn't been as good of an O-line. But there's a good chance Stanley Bryant is going to be back on that left tackle spot for Winnipeg, and that makes all the difference in the world, in my opinion, for them, because Zach's going to know his blind spot's going to be protected, at least better than it's been, and I think it'll make a world of difference here. So before I reveal what side I like in this game, ATS, Calgary's a 5-point favorite. Calgary actually opened a 6.5-point favorite in this game. Let me take you back to just the last time these teams played in Calgary, Will. It was July 3rd. It was basically 1 month ago, the first meeting in Calgary. And Calgary was playing good going into that game. Winnipeg was a 4.5-point road favorite.
Wow.
July the 3rd in Calgary. And of course, Calgary is a 4.5-point home underdog. And I remember being on this show saying I like Calgary plus 4.5 in this spot as a home dog, ascending team. And they obviously blew the doors off Winnipeg. 37-16. That's the game Zach Collaros had not one but 2 pick sixes in that game. I think one of them was from Adrian Green, who may not play. Remember, Adrian Green's their best corner. He didn't play against Ottawa last week, and he may miss this game once again. He probably will, because it says did not practice earlier this week. So suddenly he's out of there, and this is the guy that was a big part of those mistakes by Collaros in that first meeting. But 1 month later, we have gone, Will, from Winnipeg, 4.5-point road favorite, to Winnipeg, 5-point road underdog. We've gone from Calgary, 4.5-point home underdog in that game, to 5-point home favorite. Look at the way perception has changed among everyone in the CFL with these two teams. Winnipeg's fallen apart. They suck. It's over for them. This great run, this great 6-year run of excellence, it's over. Calgary's the team on the incline. I don't know. I think it's a little overreaction in this point spread that we're seeing here. I know Calgary's beaten the shit out of them, not once but twice, 2-0 straight up in ATS. They won 37-16 in Calgary, and then 2 weeks ago they beat them big time, 41-20 in Winnipeg. That's a game Zach got injured, and Streffler had to finish the game for Winnipeg. And I know Calgary's covered 4 straight. I get all that. But I think there's a big adjustment. 4.5-point dog, 4.5-point dog, 6-point dog, 3.5-point dog in those last 4 games, Winnipeg versus Calgary. Stamps were a dog in all of them. Now they're a 5 to 6-point favorite. They were 6.5-point favorite when this line opened. Still a 5-point favorite. I think there's serious value on Winnipeg, especially knowing they're 0-2 against Calgary. Sick of losing to this team. And I think Calgary, I know VA is going to play. That's the biggest fear, right? That VA is just going to slice this putrid secondary for Winnipeg. And he very well could. But I think Winnipeg, after losing 2 to Calgary, You get the best effort they can throw out there. You're getting a good number. Calgary is still 0-2 straight up and against the spread this year as favorites, by the way. They've only been favored twice, Calgary, twice. 0-2 straight up, 0-2 against the spread in those games. They were 3-point favorites against Ottawa June 21st here at McMahon. They lost that. Now, that weather was bad that day, but still, they lost that game outright as favorites. And then, of course, last week against Montreal, they opened as favorites in that, or 2 weeks ago against Montreal. They opened that game as favorites. 6.5, 7-point favorites. They lost outright to MBT and the Alouettes 23-21. So again, when they've closed as favorites, Calgary this year 0-2 straight up, 0-2 against the spread. I think Winnipeg's the side, getting +5 here in this game. And there's another one I like, the over. It's very difficult for me to bet. I like the over for 2 reasons. One, the total's 51.5. It's not 53 like the Toronto-Ottawa game. It's 55.5 like the Hamilton-BC game. It's a lower number. Second thing is we're getting a devalued, depoofed total, if you will, because now PJ played last week. Now you got VA. You got the man back. So I think the offense will be better for Calgary this week. And then on the flip side, with the Calgary defense, they're still banged up. Winnipeg, I think, is still capable of putting up points. Winnipeg has suddenly gone over 4 of their last 5 games. Both of the meetings earlier this year with these two teams went over the total. 3 straight in the series have gone over between the Bombers and the Stampeders head-to-head. So I like over 51.5 here as well. Will, what do you think? It's a fascinating game to talk about. Blue Bombers, Stamps.
Yeah, and big implications for the standings in the West. In the words of the great Michael Scott, how the turntables have turned. Now, I would argue they've probably turned a little too much, like you would, for Calgary to be laying down 5 points. I don't know. For all of Winnipeg's struggles, they're sitting above 500 at 4-3. Calgary's been a big surprise to this point in terms of the type of team that we thought they were going to be coming into the year. And, while Chris Streveler and Zach Collaros both haven't played good, they both have a negative interception to touchdown ratio. And they, quite frankly, just haven't had a lot of good production from that position, yet they're still above 500, and yet they're still winning football games. Last week, Chris Streveler had 3 interceptions and no touchdowns passing, and yet they scored 40 points. And so you could argue that's the mark of a good football team, even when they're not having really good play from quarterback. And, I think we would all argue that, Zach Collaros, while, he's getting older, his game should age well like Trevor, because he's a pocket passer. He's been in this system and all that good stuff. He's getting his left tackle back. So just a lot of points to lay down here. And they've managed to, just kind of get the job done despite the struggles. And they have a solid running game. There's this funny thing in the CFL when you start playing teams 3 times. It's not so much that when you beat a team twice that you're like, oh, we're going to beat them the 3rd time. You always say, man, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. Right. And so I think that's where I would really like the line here with Winnipeg getting 5 points. Calgary's 2-2 at home. So that's not, too much of a thing this year for them in terms of an advantage. And I like the over as well. I think both starting franchise quarterbacks coming back and, only 51.5, right? Yeah, I like the over, and I like Winnipeg getting this many points here.
The only concern, and I would say this about Edmonton, Montreal too, is you've got 2 really good teams. I still think Calgary's a pretty good team this year. I know they've hit a little speed bump here, losing to Montreal and to Ottawa back-to-back weeks, but I still think they're a good team. You've got 2 good teams and 2, veteran coaches, Dickinson and Moss, for their respective teams, Calgary and Montreal, coming off blowout losses, both of them. That would be the only concern. Like, you're definitely going to see motivation, inspiration. They're going to get after their teams this week, no doubt. So you'd expect Montreal to have a step-up effort. You'd expect Calgary to have a step-up effort here off blowout losses and playing at home. But, again, I think the situations dictate, first of all, Winnipeg, big adjustment in the point spread compared to the first 2 meetings between these teams. And the other one with Edmonton is that Edmonton has been feisty. They've been competitive. Cody's got an axe to grind going back to Montreal. So that's why I still like the Dogs in those 2 games, even though you've got pretty good teams coming off blowout losses and they're going to want to play better. All right, good stuff. There you have it. That is week 10 in the CFL. We always bring up the Vikings because Will's a Vikings fan, and I know of all the NFL teams, he loves talking about them the most. Why not? How do you feel about J.J. McCarthy going to get not only start in the first preseason game, but potentially a lot of playing time? Are you happy about that? And are you excited to see how he looks this weekend for the Minnesota Vikings here with their first preseason game coming up this weekend, taking on the Houston Texans?
Yeah, totally. Load him up, man. I mean, what is he? I don't even know if JJ's like 20. I don't even know if he's 23 years old yet. And he hasn't played a lot of real football in the last couple of years with getting hurt. So I think he needs it. I trust our head coach. It's the first head coach in my lifetime that
he will be 23 in January next year.
Yeah, man, baby, right? I remember when he got drafted being 21. I was like, good Lord, like it'll be okay for him to sit down for 2 years, and you get him on a first round contract for 5. So, he needs to play. As much as practice is great, everybody that's been in and around football knows that the real thing is just a little bit different, and it's hard to simulate, and you got to get out there and just do it. And most importantly, I trust the direction of this head coach. I think that's a really reassuring feeling that not a lot of fans have, in the majority of their time as a fan, where they're just like, man, this head coach is great, right? And they really trust him, and they trust his process and his judgment and his eye for things. And I really feel that way about KOC. So yeah, he needs to play, and definitely some interesting stuff. I was just doing some reading as just a little side note for people. Joe Milton, I was watching some practice clips of him earlier, and apparently he's been really productive for the Cowboys. And all things are a go when you're a part of the Dallas Cowboys, whether it's Micah Parsons' contract or the Dak Prescott contract stuff in the past. So apparently he's been a guy that has been really really hot, and I can confirm there was some good, impressive stuff there at camp from him. So something to watch as the year goes on if they struggle and they want to play a quarterback and all that good stuff.
He has been impressed. It's funny you mentioned that because he actually suffered. He actually hurt his hand and thumb in practice today, but apparently nothing major. No, nothing major. He's good. Okay. It was just a scare, but he's going to be okay. And in fact, he's still going to play this weekend for the Dallas Cowboys. But yeah, no doubt that is like I say, McCarthy. All eyes will be on him. I know it's only preseason and one game, but like I said, this is his team now, and it'll be fun to see him in his first snaps in an NFL game since that injury.
Ian, forgive me. I don't know if I know this. Do you have an allegiance to an NFL team?
I grew up as a Bills fan. Deep down, I still cheer for them, want the best for them. But like with all these sports, the Ticats are the one I have still the biggest personal attachment to. Yep. It's hometown, and I'm and plus I'm invested. I'm a season ticket holder. I'm not a season ticket holder for the Bills or for the Raptors or for some of these other teams that I kind of wouldn't mind, seeing them do well. The Ticats are different. So it's really more I'm a fan of who I'm betting on. Where am I going to get paid? Who's going to pay me this week?
That's why we're here.
Yeah, that's right. That's why we're here. That's who I'm cheering for. So I could be a fan of a different team every week, basically. But to answer your question, deep down inside, I do want the Bills to do well.
Sure. Yeah. Nice. Both of us then have never had an NFL team win a Super Bowl.
Exactly. Bills and Vikings have been some of this hard luck franchises for decades now. Yep. People wonder with both franchises, Bills and Vikings, is it ever going to be their day, to be Super Bowl champion? We know the Bills have been knocking on the door. They knocked on the door 4 times in the 90s with Jim Kelly. And speaking of Marv Levy, 100th birthday, shout out to Marv Levy, 100th birthday the other day. And you wouldn't know it listening to him. Sharp as a tack. Other than he has a walker to assist him, and who the fuck wouldn't have one at 100 years old? But other than that, his health is impeccable. He speaks well. He hasn't forgotten anything. He speaks extremely well for 100 years old. Just unbelievable. And it's just in great health, and it's great to see it for one of the legends of not only the NFL, Grey Cup champion coach, long time ago in the 70s in the CFL as well, Marv Levy. So shout out Marv Levy. Happy 100th birthday. If we get to 100, we'll take it, right? Hopefully, right?
Yep, absolutely. I'm with you on that. By then, we'll be replaced by, it'll probably just be like floating electrons at that point, just AI in a robot body or something.
Are human beings even going to be around still when we're at the point where we're about to turn 100? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a legit question. Where this friggin' society's going.
It's all good though. We're here today.
We're here today, and cherish every day. That's definitely the point. And cherish every best bet as well, because we're about to bring you one right now to wrap up the show as always. Will, we'll start with you. What do you like for best bet?
All right. As I teased earlier in the show, my best bet, not to your liking, Ian, is going to be at that Shea Day game. I like the BC Lions to cover. And then a little side note, I think they're going to win straight up. I think they're going to jump on these guys. It might get close, but I expect BC off of a bye week, off of a bad loss to this same team to be fully reloaded and charged. They're healthy. Like you mentioned, their back is against the wall in terms of their coaching staff being criticized. I think they got a MVP caliber player at quarterback and James Butler, a solid running back, and them getting points. I really like that in this matchup. So hammer down BC at the Hammer.
All right, BC Lions +3. Is that the best number out there? Yeah, it is +3.
Yeah, you got it a little better.
But
you got 4.5, right?
Yeah, early in the week. There's a couple things I got on early in the week, and one of them is my best bet that I'm about to give you, but I still like it at the current number, even though it's moved a little bit. Give me those Edmonton Elks. +3.5 against Montreal. Cody Fajardo back in Montreal, axe to grind, point to prove, wants to make a statement. How dare you trade me away in the offseason? I won you a Grey Cup, and that's what you do. You trade me away. No, I think he goes in there, plays a hell of a game, and Montreal is a mash unit right now. Injuries galore, riddled on both sides of the football. I think Edmonton has got a real good chance to go in there and win it, but at the very least cover. Remember, 2-0 against the spread for the Edmonton Elks since Cody Fajardo became the starting quarterback, with a 4-point loss to Saskatchewan. 3-point loss at Saskatchewan, 4-point loss to Hamilton. We'll go with Edmonton here against a banged-up Montreal team. Edmonton Elks +3.5 against Montreal for best bet. There he is. There you go. Good, perfect day to use best bet as that. The Elks' best bet, with Will rocking the Elks T-shirt right there. Good stuff indeed. Will's a big movie star too, or TV star. He's about to do some stuff with that as well. So good stuff out in LA. Good, happy travels. Always great. You're getting a lot of I know you will let you say something before we wrap it up, but I'm getting all kinds of great comments from our viewers and listeners about your contributions, Will, to this show. That they love your insight. They love the being able to hear the way a player thinks, on a week-to-week basis here with these CFL games. Of course, you playing in the league with both Ottawa and BC in the past, and people are really appreciating your contributions and your insight on the show. So bravo, man. Well done. Keep up the good work.
Yes, sir. No, of course. Yeah, I think that's what I try to provide, to the listeners is, what's been my experience, right? And that, whether that be inside the locker room or inside the coaching office for the CFL in particular, and just kind of give you the inner workings of what is a real obstacle from both of their standpoints, or what things kind of create value or go through their head, and then try to, create that into some information that, you guys can act on or anecdotally think about. So, at the end of the day, these are people. So I think we can better understand it. And also it helps just kind of better tell the story, because ultimately we're all fans at the end of the day. That's why we're tuned in. If we make a little money, that's great. But ultimately we're big fans of the game first and foremost. And like you mentioned, I got a cool NFL project to do out in LA. I can't say too much more than that, but, just to be in and around the game itself is a privilege, and I don't take it for granted. So as I don't take it for granted that you have me on the show and I can provide some value to you guys. So appreciate y'all.
There you have it. What a way to wrap it up. For Will Arndt, I'm Ian Cameron. This has been another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Enjoy CFL Week 10 action and good luck, and we'll be back next week for another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.